weekend, millions of us get up, go outside and walk in parallel lines up and down our gardens. Collectively, we mow an area bigger than the size of Greater London. And honestly, I really struggle to think of a more boring way to spend my time, other than perhaps watching somebody else mow their lawn. So 3 months ago, I went out and bought myself a robot lawnmower. It's called the ECOVACS GOAT. And the question is it the GOAT? For a bit of context, my garden is about 800 square meters, and I needed a robot lawnmower that could cut that in about a day, including the time it takes to recharge, so that if it rains, that gives it a little bit of time to catch up. I picked the ECOVACS GOAT here from the millions of alternatives now on the market for two main features. The first is its ability to navigate the garden without wires or GPS, and the second was the edge trimmer here. Oh, and it mows in straight lines. I couldn't bear one of those mowers that mows in a random pattern. I'd forever be looking for the bit it missed. But that's OCD for you. Now, mowers that use a perimeter wire are much cheaper, but they're a right old faff to install and the wires do get broken. GPS mowers, on the other hand, are arguably better, but you still usually have to install an antenna. And GPS mowers can still get confused under tree cover. The GOAT here doesn't have that problem. It uses something called LiDAR, which uses light to map your garden. All you have to do is position the base station. I've put mine here quite a way back from the lawn, out of sight of the house and close to a shed where I've got a power supply. And then take your GOAT for a walk around the edge of your garden. It then creates the 3D map. By the way, if you'd like to buy one of these things, I've put a link in the description below. But before you do, let me show you what's good about it and what isn't. Once you've mapped the perimeter, you then need to set any exclusion zones that you don't want to mow. For example, this flower bed here. Actually, that's a slightly optimistic description. I think what I actually mean is this weed bed here. Anyway, then you can just set a schedule and your GOAT will go and mow the lawn whenever you want. And it'll trim your edges, or at least that's what it claims. And when it runs out of juice or it starts raining, it goes back to its charging station before picking up where it left off later. It also has a camera for collision avoidance, not just for avoiding children that it might otherwise run over mulch and spread as fertilizer all over your lawn, but I also tested it to see whether it would stop at a deck chair. Ooh, well done. Flushed with success, I gave it a football to play with. And then a loo brush. Because unattended loo brushes are a constant hazard in our garden. Perhaps more usefully, I ought to check whether or not it'll avoid apples. So far this year, only a few have dropped from the tree and I've been picking them up. But if I'm going to go on holiday, I'd like to know it's going to avoid them. Oops! Well, I guess not then. Oh well, I've been looking for an excuse to cut this bloody tree down. It dumps hundreds of cookers on the lawn every year, and there's only so many jars of applesauce I can eat. Two other features if you don't have an apple tree and you're going to leave it running unattended. The first is that you can set a PIN code to make it not worth nicking. And the camera on the front will also stream to your phone, so you can watch what your GOAT is seeing when you're out and about. You'll be an absolute wow at dinner parties. Look, my ECOVACS GOAT here is mowing my lawn at a very respectable 180 square meters per hour. Anyway, after 3 months of mowing my lawn and boring my dinner party guests, what do I think of this thing? Well, as a lawnmower, I absolutely bloody love it. I suppose the first thing you notice is how quiet it is. I thought I might miss the sound of a petrol lawnmower, the great thrumming harbinger of summer. But no, I couldn't be more pleased to have a lawnmower I can't hear. Although that descriptor does apply to pretty much anything these days, from my wife to a 747 passing low overhead. Aside from that, and the obvious benefit of not having to walk up and down the lawn each week, there are two other things to love about robot lawnmowers. The first is that because they cut little and often, there are no cuttings to deal with, so your compost heap halves in size. The second is that because these things cut every day or two, you have a pristine lawn every day. With my old lawnmower, I'd mow the lawn on a Saturday, it would start looking a little bit ragged by mid-week, then we'd be invited out for lunch the following Saturday, and I certainly couldn't be bothered to mow the lawn after that. Then it would rain, so by the following week the garden had pretty much returned to nature. On top of that, this thing mows in stripes, which I like. They are narrower than a petrol mower, so don't think your garden's going to look like Lord's cricket ground. They're more of a pinstripe, but I think that's actually quite smart. Problems? Just one actually, which was what you might call operator error after I failed to read the instruction book where it said do not make a perimeter at the bottom of anything more than a 17-degree slope. Unfortunately, my 18-degree slope here ends in a cliff face, which Billy, as we've inevitably decided to call our goat, decided to throw itself off. In the early days, Billy did get stuck a couple of times, mostly caught one of his hooves in this little flower bed by the rose, but that was easily enough fixed. Just redid the perimeter to give it a slightly wider berth. One small problem is the app, which tells you when the blades need replacing. Mine's told me that my blades are blunt about 3 times in as many months, and if that were true, it would have cost me £75 to replace them. But thankfully, you can ignore the warning, reset it, and just let it carry on mowing regardless, which mine is doing absolutely fine. So as a lawnmower then, this thing is fantastic, almost flawless. But what about the edging? Honestly, it's absolutely shit. Sorry, I just struggle to think of a better word. Look, it just doesn't go up to the edges. And if it sees so much as a single stem sticking out from your border, it'll give it a very wide berth. Now, when I realised what a rubbish job this thing was doing with my edges, I went and took another look at the app and found a setting called Adaptive Edges, which is supposed to do a better job of the edging. Not for me, it doesn't. Others have complained the edger is noisy, but only in comparison to the mower itself. If you sit it next to a petrol strimmer, it's positively quiet. But that's slightly beside the point, because until ECOVACS can get the software running a bit better, you probably won't use the strimmer anyway. I paid £739 for this thing on the promise of wire and GPS-free navigation and good edging. So do I regret it? No, not in the slightest. I absolutely love it. It's kept my lawn absolutely pristine, and for 3 months now, it's kept my diary free of lawn mowing. And having to get my strimmer out once a month is really not a big deal. And who knows, maybe ECOVACS will be able to cure that problem with a future software update. So if you want to buy one of these things for its mowing alone, there's a link in the description below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Until the next time, bye-bye.